Welcome, everyone. My name is John Laub, CEO of Grayleaf Technology Consultants, and with me today is Myles Keough. He's the CEO of Spade Technology, and Spade is a managed services provider in the Providence, Rhode Island, Boston area. I think you guys are pretty much right in between. And Grayleaf and Spade, we've worked together for quite a while now, several years, and had a great relationship. And what I thought we would do today is interview Myles and talk about some of the amazing things that Spade Technology is doing up there in the Northeast. So, Myles, tell me a little bit about yourself. First of all, your personal life.
I live near the office, so I live about 25 minutes, half hour out of Boston. Married, 3 kids, 2 girls, a boy, and a couple of boxers. So working from home today, so if you hear a dog fight in the background, it's just my boxers, nothing to worry about. I went to school for information systems back when that wasn't really a thing in the School of Business. People didn't understand why I was in that in the School of Business, and worked. We moved further away from Boston down to the Cape. I was the last of 5, so when I was in high school, we went down that way, and my first job was with a software company down there, and I got to, I was basically in charge of System 38s and AS400s, OS2 Warp, Windows 3.1, 95, this new thing, NT 311. So a lot of cool stuff. But I got exposed to a lot of that early, and was kind of stolen away from there to a Microsoft consulting company, and that's when I first kind of got into the consulting space. So we grew that from like 25 people to about 750, and then did a little bouncing around, both internal and external, for a while, and then about 19 years ago started Spade. So,
tell me a little bit about what like led you to that decision. That's a big leap to go from a company that you've had a tremendous influence on to starting your own. What kind of led up to that decision?
So I always knew I wanted to kind of do it on my own. It was actually funny. I went back and forth from internal IT to external, and I noticed when I was internal IT, and there was projects at night and things to worry about, the consultants would all leave at 5 o'clock, and I'd be there till 1 in the morning. And then when I was the consultant, I noticed that the IT director would leave at 5 o'clock till 1 in the morning. And after a while, as I realized, this may not be the position. It actually may be, the way I'm wired. So I got to experience some large, huge Fortune 50 companies and work as a consultant in their IT. And then on the flip side, I got to work for some small, fast growth VCs. And I saw these VCs that were nimble and quick and could basically print money. They weren't able to deploy technology as fast as these big behemoths, and it didn't make any sense to me. And what I started to see is these large corporations had dedicated people, dedicated process, dedicated time, and these smaller firms had a guy, right? And I started to see that that's really what the driving difference was, because theoretically the smaller company should get technology up and running a lot faster. So I put a lot more focus into process, and basically what we came up with, our service model, is we took what we saw effective at the enterprise level and sliced it up so it's consumable by the small and medium business. But that's really kind of the core of what started it. Is I saw like there's not enough maturity, there's not enough operational maturity by these IT companies in the small business space, and that's what I wanted to bring.
So I want to get back to that, Myles. Let's talk a little bit first, though, about what a managed services provider really does, and where Spade really shines in that regard.
So yeah, it's funny. The managed service provider term I've grown to hate a little bit because I feel like it's been modified and thrown around so much, and I think a lot of it is the managed service space became, we're going to charge a fixed amount for unlimited help desk. And that all of a sudden was the definition of managed services. And we didn't really kind of see it that way. We've been doing that since day one, the managed services piece. And so I always I refer to it as an orchestrated service provider. right? You're really kind of orchestrating all these different components to give a predictable result, right? So really what we looked at is breaking out the stuff that you have to do to be in the space, you know, the reactive work, you know, help desk, that kind of stuff, the all of the management of the different tools, patching, security, all that good stuff. You know, we looked at that as the low value work. And, you know, I have great respect for my team that does that work. I'm not saying that that's not important. Just saying it's hard to really justify a value on that, because those are things that A, you need, and B, when you're using those, using the help desk, as a business owner, your business is losing money, right? You're either not operating 100% or you're operating, you're not operating at all. So we kind of looked at, okay, it's tough to build a value prop on that. And that's why we focused a lot on implementation, auditing, and best practices, and strategy and planning, and really trying to, you know, I always say to our clients, we're a business consulting company. We just happen to know a lot about technology. And that's our approach from the get-go. We take similarly to you go through with like a traction coach or gazelles coach, we take that same philosophy of what's the long-term goal, what's the 3-year plan, 1 year, quarterly, and you know, really kind of a lot of times we're dragging our clients down that path because they don't always see IT that way. They see IT as a utility, like an electric bill, and we're trying to get them to, you know, move it out of the liability column and put it into the asset column. You know, you're investing all this money. Most of the time when I meet with people, when we really do the math, they're spending twice as much as they really think they are. And it's like, what are you getting back? What's the outcome? It shouldn't just be to fix things when they break. You should be driving efficiency, making yourself more secure, eliminating risk, you know? So, and most importantly, it should be the oars of the IT boat should be hitting the water with the rest of the company, right? You should all be going the same way. So that's really our process. That's really sort of what we try to do is make sure that's all functioning correctly.
So instead of just like you know, the 911 call, right, the help desk request, it sounds like you really focus more on the partnership side of it. And from a consulting perspective, it's more than just, okay, let's fix the thing that's on fire today. And you're looking more at, okay, well, let's look at how this house is built. Is that a safe statement?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you don't, as an IT partner, if you don't understand what the revenue streams of your clients are, you know, if you don't understand what affects their profitability and what their growth plans are and what their major objectives and commitments to their clients are, I don't understand how you can give them any recommendations at all. You're kind of flying blind. IT needs to be supporting all of those items, right?
So tell me a little bit now. Let's say I'm a small business owner and I've got some pain. In fact, I don't even really know why I have this pain. I just know things hurt, and I want to partner with somebody that will help me figure it out. Tell me a little bit about Spade's process for working with me and trying to figure out, okay, well, you know, how do we get down to the actual ways that you can help?
So it's funny, when I meet with people for the first time, I always tell them I'm a decision consultant. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to help you make the decision. Part of our process when we bring clients on board is to kind of get them to think about their IT differently. And if we can't get them there, our model won't make sense and they won't buy from us, which is kind of a good thing because that's how you help avoid, you know, bad client relations, right? So as we walk them through that and try to get them to look at things a little differently, I always tell them they should be thinking when they're talking to any service provider, but especially IT, what the service, how the service is delivered, what's the process behind it, and then based on that process, make a judgment of, do you believe that process will get the results that you want, right? And oftentimes when we're first talking to people, everything they're talking to us about is symptoms. It's just all these symptoms over and over and over again of, you know, well, we're not, you know, I just want them to answer the phone faster when they're talking about their current provider. Or, we have the same problems over and over again. I don't understand why. I just want that one problem fixed. Or, you know, we had a breach, right? And, you know, we're concerned because we had a breach. usually all those things are the tip of the iceberg, and we often tell them, like, look, if you have a breach, I mean, it used to be, they said, you've been breached if it, on average, you don't know you've been breached until 89 days later. And then the next study was like 92 and 120. And, so I always tell them, like, if you've had one breach, you've probably had more than one, right? So it's really kind of getting, when we're talking to those business owners, not just getting them to look at what the pain is that they see, but think, what else does that mean? If this little simple thing isn't being done correctly, are you confident that this complex critical thing is being done correctly? Do you have any proof that it's being done correctly? Not just someone nodding their head saying, yeah, it's done, but have you seen it? Do you have screenshots? Do you know that this stuff that's critical, like business continuity and backup and cybersecurity, do you know that stuff's being done? I think just like with sort of taxes and probably with you dealing with a lawyer, when it comes to IT, business owners feel they have to trust a lot because they're not experts. But they can still look for proof, right? And that's what we try to do with our clients. We try to make them show them on a regular basis, here's the proof of all the stuff we're doing. We're going to bring it to you, so can have some peace in mind that this stuff's actually executing.
So getting back to your first comments when we first began, you started the business Spade Technology with this idea, and the idea being that, we're not firemen. It sounds like what you're talking about is you're much more interested in developing relationships, and that's based on communication, and maybe even consulting. Part of that is telling maybe people things they maybe don't want to hear. So it sounds like Spade's not the type of company that is just one that says, okay, well, I'm going to go put this fire out, and then call me again when you have the next fire. Is that a safe statement?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Fires cost both us and our clients too much money.
So tell me a little bit more about the kind of a good client. What do you look for in a client that you partner with?
It's a great question. So it's funny, we meet, probably the most exciting part of my job, of my role, is getting to just meet all these bright business owners and honestly all the different ways there are to make a buck. It's just so funny to see. It's a unique time between technology and just manufacturing. We have a 140-year-old manufacturing company, and we have some like 2-year-old biotechs, right? So it's really cool to see these different business owners and how they operate. And some we meet with and say, great, what's your plan for the next 2-3 years? And then we're going to double in size and revenue. I'm like, great, how are you going to do that? And they're like, we're going to sell more. I'm like, it's not really a plan, right? So some people we have like that, and other people are super sophisticated in their business, their modeling. Some of them have, PE firms that bought them and have planted some executives there that have scaled businesses. The most important part about either of those is that they're willing to put the effort in, and they understand the importance of IT in their business. We've met with, usually in the first meeting with someone, I ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is IT? 99% of the time they tell me it's a 10 or an 11, right? By the end of the meeting, I have a number in my head of what I believe they value IT. And oftentimes it's not a 10. I've said to some people as we go through it, if IT is a 10, why are you treating it like a 6, right? And so, getting people to get that, that want to meet once a quarter and go over, sort of open up what their business strategy is, tell us where their concerns are, where they see areas that are critical to their business. Like, these are our 10 goals, but we have to achieve these 2. The ones that are really willing to partner with us, those are the ones we can have the most success with, right? So,
Why do you think that happens? Why do you think, everybody would probably agree that IT is a huge critical component of any business, but why do you think that some businesses don't really value it like they should? They come in at a 6 when they really say that it's a 10.
A few things. I mean, one is costs. They don't have a good way to measure their return on what they're spending. So we particularly see that when we meet with people and go through a plan, and it's the ongoing cost is one thing, but it's when it comes time to invest in certain tools, software, projects, data integration, reporting, where they kind of hesitate and pull back because of the cost. And that's the part that's where we really have to focus on. Again, we have to tie this back to the value to the business. And if a lot of them get into a relationship where it's like, yeah, IT is important. I want strategy. I want my IT aligned to my business. And they work with an IT partner for 5 years, and that IT partner doesn't know anything about the business. Oh, I know about the business. What do you know? I know they run this software and have these servers, and that's not knowing the business, right? So I think they say they want the strategy, but when the end of the day comes, they have a relationship based on IT and technology, not on business drivers, and they don't look at it like an investment, right? So that takes a while to change, and sometimes they want to do it, but then they like, well, no, I'm just focused on sales. I got to get sales. I'll get to IT eventually, right? And IT kind of gets pushed in the back. So it's really, I think it's our job as IT professionals is to constantly keep that front and center and make sure they know, look, you're not handwriting letters, you're sending email, right? Look at what else you can do throughout the organization to make your team more efficient. And by the way, most of our customers, their biggest expense is payroll. So to me, if we can have a 5% impact on that number, it's pretty good value, right?
Yeah, great point. You mentioned earlier about data breaches, and people there. It's always in the news. We're always hearing about organizations that are suffering data breaches and ransomware attacks, and it's something that organizations everywhere are vulnerable to. So tell us a little bit about kind of what you're doing to help customers prepare, be ready, and just to insulate them from those types of threats.
Certainly, yeah. There's sort of, we have our regular managed service, that we also have a managed security service, and typically that's more like DoD contractors, SEC, HIPAA type companies that have another level of regulations they have to comply with. But a lot of that stuff just bleeds down into our regular service for all of our clients, and some of it is, I'm a big believer of technology-led security. Policy-led security, and testing it with technology. So, we actually just had a conversation with a company today, and they said, hey, we want to see about getting a vulnerability test. And I said, yeah, based on our conversation, can I send an email with what that test is the results are going to look like? I don't have to come and look at your environment. You can just tell me how you're managing it, and I already know what the answer is going to be. So, we kind of tell them, like, get some basic policies and procedures in place, and that's part of what we do. We onboard. It seems simple, but there's some simple procedures and policies to get in place. During COVID is a perfect example of when we've been hitting with people is, home non-company owned devices, right? Like all of a sudden we had a few different clients where that was popping up, and we're like, hey, this is against your security policy. Yeah, I know, but they got to work from home. It's like, all right, well, can we explain to you what the risk is, right? And in some cases, they could be breaching a contract with one of their clients by allowing people into their network like that. So a lot of it is just simple policy type things, getting them rolled out. Obviously, rock solid backup, disaster recovery, business continuity, and most importantly, rigorous testing of it on a regular basis, right? The number one way to get out of ransomware is have an awesome backup. We're seeing a lot of ransomware now where they're disrupting backup. So they go in, they don't break the backup. They used to do that. Now what they'll do is they'll go in and they'll deselect everything except for one file from your backup and let your backups run. So your backups run for 90 days and you keep getting a green check saying the backup's good, the backup's good. Then they throw the encryption on day 91. And you're like, great, I'll go back to my backup. And you look and you have one file backed up. So
as a business owner, these are things that you don't think about this type of thing. And having a partner like Spade, I can see that that's the value you guys deliver, right? Because you're thinking about the things that the business owner really isn't.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, we touched on security, but, what about like CMMC? So the cybersecurity maturity model certification, and do you guys do anything in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a few clients that have been dealing with that. And now it's kind of interesting because that really was kind of released in January of this year, and they're already looking to see by the end of this month, some action from some of these companies as far as for bidding on things in September. So it's rolling out fast. The good news is a lot of companies, especially DoD, they were already kind of down this path with DFARS, the DFARS regulation they were dealing with. So a lot of it is similar in how things are done from a cybersecurity perspective. It's just reporting on it that's a little different. But I think you're going to see, if you look at a lot of these, a lot of them all funnel back to tie closely to the top 20 critical security controls. NIST 800.171, the CMMC, the SEC's adopting some of that stuff. I mean, everyone's kind of going to that. So what I usually tell people, like, even if your business doesn't fall directly into this category, those top 20 critical security controls is a great place to start. And just like they did with the CMMC, where they have sort of the different phases, the level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which, by the way, level 1, every business should be at. I mean, if you're not, you have bigger fish to fry, right? But it's very similar with the top 20 critical security controls has the 3 implementation groups. The way the DFARS we originally used to do them, the security maturity level assessments, it was a 1 through 5 rating. So it's just a more formalized way for the DoD contractors to report in and get sort of graded on their cybersecurity. And honestly, it's kind of almost past due, right? I mean, it's kind of scary when we've gone into some contractors and see what their interpretation of security is. Yeah.
And if you're doing any kind of work with the federal government, then this certification is absolutely crucial. We know that the idea of NIST 800.171 has been out for a while, but now that there are actually there's going to be companies that will need to certify organizations to be compliant. So just as you mentioned, there's some some of this compliance needs to be in place by September this year. So there's certainly a high level of urgency around it. So if anyone is a government contractor, that would be very important to look into and to pursue.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Myles, tell me a little bit about. Let's kind of switch gears a little bit. So tell me, if you had to go anywhere, if you could pick a vacation anywhere to go, money was no object. Tell me a little bit. Tell me, where would you go?
That's a great question. We actually had a surprise trip planned for the family to go. We're bringing the kids with a couple other families we knew to Aruba, and that was actually, we were supposed to be leaving this Saturday. So that got canceled. But yeah, that actually probably only because we were kind of psyched. The kids had no idea. Now, keep in mind, this was a different time, but we were going to have to take them. We were planning it around the day after school ended. So we didn't know school was going to end 3 months earlier. So the reason that was significant is we went on our honeymoon, so we thought it'd be fun to bring the kids back down there. So there's a lot of other places I'd love to go to. For me personally, I'd love to go to Ireland, do a golf trip there. But I think for the sake of my family and the fact that we were this close, that Aruba trip would be nice to get back.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. Aruba's beautiful. I've never been there, but I have some friends that have gone. I have been to Ireland and highly recommend Ireland, Scotland as well. Fell in love with Edinburgh. So those are great places to visit if you
Oh,
can.
excellent. Excellent.
Which kind of leads us to kind of this COVID situation we got going on. As we all know, traveling is really something that's been put on pause, but it's also had a big technology impact, and organizations are really struggling. Of course, we know that there's layoffs going on in a lot of industries, and people are really suffering. Tell me a little bit about what does Spade Technology do to help people through this COVID-19 period?
Certainly. So there's been there's been a lot of it's funny, there's been a lot of opportunity for us to help our clients. And I think our clients have made a lot of changes to their technology that they're probably going to keep forever. That probably makes their company better, and they probably wouldn't have done if it wasn't for COVID. So it'll be interesting to see as time goes on the impact. But a lot of the things we did around just managing a remote workforce, right? A lot of our clients are heavily using SharePoint and Teams and leveraging other parts of Office 365, but there are quite a few that we've talked about over and over and over again, and it was always the Annie song, right? Tomorrow, 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 right? They never wanted to get to it, and about 2 days after we went to lockdown here in Massachusetts, we got a lot of phone calls of, hey, how quickly can you roll those out? So we actually came up with a format for like a rapid deployment of just Teams. This is a high level, like this is how we can help you, just to understand it, right? And of course, that inevitably turns into, sort of a toe into the waters of SharePoint. And next thing you know, they want to talk more about that, and they start to see the value of it. So we've been dealing a lot with that, with helping clients kind of get out of their infrastructure, get into fully take advantage of Office 365. We always tell people, like, you're paying for it, and you're just not leveraging it. Like, there's so much. It's like you have a Ferrari in the garage, but you just don't want to drive it, so we've been really focusing on that a lot with our clients. And then also just guiding them through, again, the cybersecurity piece and the policies around work from home, what that looks like. A lot of people didn't see the benefits of laptops. The desktops were cheaper, and now they're really seeing the benefits of having people work from their company issued laptop and digital certificates, and all the controls and security that's needed, right, to be able to work efficiently and not risk the company data. So
Tell me a little bit, if I'm a business owner, why is Office 365 such a big deal, and why is it so powerful? What is it about it really that can make such a difference?
well, there's a few different ways to kind of think about it. One is, like I said, the easy one is most companies are already paying for it, or they've already had it integrated in their environment to some degree. So we see people look, it's funny, we talk to some people who are using GoToMeeting and they're using Zoom and all this, and we're like, well, why don't you use Teams? Well, we don't really want to load out. I don't know if we have it licensed, and I don't know this. It's like, no, you just watch, click, click, here, you're in. Like, you got it, right? And then some of it is just the from a security and an operational perspective as a company. If you have Office 365, if you may or may not have Active Directory integration, which means it's tied into your standard username and password, you already have it in your company. It's already part of who you are as an IT organization, your company. Leveraging that rather than going somewhere else. It's similar to just like the Zoom and GoToMeeting conversation. We have people that have Box or Google Drive, or they have all these other tools they're using, and they don't know that they have this awesome, totally integrated piece right under their nose. Like, even just, and I've talked about this before, but even just the integration between, the fact that Teams and SharePoint, OneDrive for Business are all pulling from that same database, the same copy, the same version. We have some people that like maybe they're more old school and they like the directory structure, look and feel. Great, use OneDrive for Business. We have other people that want the browser-based. They love SharePoint. That's where they want to live. Awesome. We have other people. It's funny. We have other people that use Teams, that tell us they don't like SharePoint. So we use Teams, and I'm like, okay, you're using SharePoint, but that's fine, right? But so everyone can kind of have their own, interface, and it just ties everything together. And from an IT perspective, I'm looking at it. Hate to go back to the cybersecurity piece, but we're writing policies. The more data centers, the more vendors you get involved, software vendors, the more complex your policies are, the more complex your security is, the more complex your auditing is, right? Whereas if everything's tied into, you can have one username and password with MFA on it, and boom, you can get into everything you need right there. And it's just, I'm just surprised more companies aren't jumping on that right away. It just seems to be this Ferrari in the garage they don't want to use for some reason.
And when you think about, that Microsoft, this product has an army of security people behind it whose only job is to stay up at night and make this platform safe. And, security people that are at a level that, no business can afford. These guys are out there doing it, and you're exactly right. They're already paying for it, right? These companies really don't realize if they're using Exchange or if they're using Teams or they're using some of these other tools, they're already getting all of this power behind it. But maybe they want to actually open the door of the Lamborghini and sit in and maybe take it for a spin, right? Is what you're saying.
Yeah. And they, it's I said this to someone the other day. We were talking like, well, they're asking about the security and whatnot. And I'm like, look, your servers in your server are locked, right? Yeah. Okay. So someone breaks in the window in the middle of the night, grabs your server, and takes off through the woods. Your data is not encrypted on their hard drive, right? You're probably not going to catch them. Away they go. Go do that at a Microsoft data center. Let's see how far you get. You know what I mean? Like they're putting billions into their infrastructure to protect all of it. The hackers aren't looking for the big, difficult targets. They're not trying to break the company that has, billion in cybersecurity budget. They're looking to break the guy that throws a little firewall out there and crosses his fingers, right? That's their target. It's an easier target.
How would you characterize hackers, Myles? Would you say that, are hackers, are they just like, guys that are kind of lazy, sitting in, somewhere, and, or would you characterize them as pretty innovative people who are constantly trying to devise new ways to break through firewalls and to penetrate systems? What are your thoughts?
So cybercrime in 2020 is about a $3 trillion business. I think the hard part for us right now is that it's way more lucrative to be a criminal and easier than it is to be a good guy. They're getting a lot of really bright people on that side. They're getting very, very sophisticated in their approach. They're using a lot of automation. They have access to things that we don't have access to. The dark web's becoming like an e-commerce site now. So everyone thinks there's some kid in his basement, his parents' basement, hacking away at the firewall. It's like, and that's why I say they don't care what network hole they find. They just set up some automation. It goes. They buy a list of known usernames and passwords, known good usernames and passwords online. They match up with someone else who has a script. They say, okay, great, here you go, use mine. I'll give you 50 cents for I'll give you 50% of anything that I get. And they just automate their scripts and go. I mean, they're a well-oiled machine. And by the way, we've had to come in, we just did one a few weeks ago. We've had to come in a few times with, unfortunately, it tends to be people who we talk to and we didn't do business right away for some reason or another. And then they call me and say, I had an issue. And we just had one we went into where he had ransomware, and he didn't go with us because we were a little more expensive than his current provider. As another client once said to me, he found how expensive cheap can be. And not only were they really good in what they did, but at the end of it, when they finally gave us the key and unlocked everything, they said literally, verbatim, we take our job very seriously. This is how we got into your environment. We recommend you close this, change this, do this, da da da. And almost every time we've had to swoop in like that and deal with the hackers. Almost every time at the end, they've told us how they did it and what we should do to prevent it. So, I mean, it was to the point where this business owner said to me, I don't know if I should reply back to them and say thank you.
Wow. Expensive lesson.
Yeah.
What would you say to a business owner who's like, wow, this is just too much to think about, too much to worry about. It sounds too expensive for me to get started. What would you reply to them?
I think the important part is for them to step back and really say, is IT a 10 in my business, right? And the easy exercise I have people do all the time is, okay, great. You have nothing for 5 days. No email, no access to data, no files, no anything. Go 5 days. What would your clients think? What would your employees think? What would your partners think? If after that you think that IT is not a 10, then I wouldn't sweat too much. But if that makes you a little nauseous, I would start treating it as important as your taxes. I mean, you really only worry about your taxes once a year, and you still probably worry about it all year long, right? IT is every day. So, we often meet with people and we just walk them through a basic exercise. It takes about 20, 25 minutes of, here's your business today. Here's where there's some gaps. This is what it could look like. These are associated costs. Do you see enough value there, right? Does it make sense to maybe invest a little more, or treat it a little more seriously?
So is it safe to say that, it's not necessarily, it doesn't need to be a huge investment, but it needs to be the right investment, and just directing funds in the right way. And you probably work with people's budgets, but you're sounds like you're acutely aware of kind of where the vulnerabilities are and where the dollar should be invested.
Yeah, absolutely. And we actually find, so part of what we do when we do our onboarding is we go through and we do basically an IT cost assessment and look through where all the what all the IT expenses are and put them, chart them out. And for us, it's kind of easy because we do this for so many companies. Stuff jumps out to us right away. But we often see, people are spending 3 times more than they should for Office licensing, Office 365 licensing, because they're not managing it correctly. Or they thought they had cybersecurity insurance, but they really don't. And it's a huge risk for them because they're not going to get covered for 99% of things that could happen to them. Or they're overpaying for software, overpaying for, internet connectivity or whatever. So oftentimes we're finding where the money is not spent correctly and just helping them, adjust, right, where that's going to go into the right place. I always tell people it's important they understand every dollar they're spending on IT, why they're spending it, and what they get in for return.
That really, I think that's noteworthy to reiterate, is that, and you mentioned this earlier too, Myles, about saving efficiencies, and if you can save 5% of the labor on your workforce, and by gaining efficiencies, process efficiencies or IT efficiencies, it's possible. Really, what you're saying is that it's less a question about, hey, this is going to cost me a lot. The point I think that you're trying to make is this could actually cost you less.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and that's especially now. It's funny, we were just talking about this in a meeting yesterday. If someone's been in the workforce, if they first came to the workforce in 2008, 2009. 30-year-old person out of college, 32, they've never seen an economy that's not growing, right? So, now it's a little bit easier of a conversation to get people going into, of like, hey, what if you can't have all the people on staff, right? Like, even with COVID, a lot of people had to furlough people, but their workload didn't, they may have to furlough half their staff, but their workload didn't cut in half. So now more than ever is the time to look and say, are we getting everything we should be getting out of our technology? Are there ways we can be more efficient? And if you're in growth mode, it's the same conversation, right? There's just not that financial sense of urgency, but it's, look, if we're scaling, do I want to add 2 new people for every, whatever, 10 clients I bring in? What if I only have to add 1 new person for every 10 clients I bring in? What else? And again, same thing. It's not just about more money to the bottom line, but it might also be, where else can I invest that money in my company to provide a better service, to take care of my clients, to help retain clients, whatever it is. Like, that's what it's all about. IT should be about making your team more efficient and mitigating risk, so that you can do what you do well, right? Rather than dealing with redundancies and inefficiencies and,
Great point. Yeah, and we do have to wrap up. I did want to ask though, Myles. Let's say somebody wanted to just chat and, just discuss. Hey, these are my pain points. I have a few questions. Do you charge anything for that if somebody were to reach out to you and you just chat to kind of, have that initial discussion?
No. I have those conversations. I do probably 4 or 5 of those a week, of just kind of guiding people through. And I always tell people, oftentimes, we may not do business right away. We may not do business ever. But I kind of feel like it's my obligation to help people out in that space and help guide them. And I believe in karma and good things come around. So, and honestly, I love those conversations. Like I said, talking to business owners, I usually get just as much out of talking to them as they do talking to me.
I share that completely. If somebody wants to reach out to you, Myles, or someone else at Spade to help their business, tell me a little bit, how would they do, how could they do that?
Hit the website. You can call us, 866-GET-SPADE, or send me an email, mkeough@spadetechnology.com. Again, typically it's a 20-minute conversation up front, just to kind of go through sort of where they are. And at that point, we can usually have a good feel after that 20-25 minutes. Hey, does it make sense to talk more? Is it a fit? Or if not, I sometimes redirect people to the right place that can help them out.
What is the URL of your website?
It's Spade, SPADE, technology.com.
Thank you. Any other final thoughts or comments, Myles, you'd like to make?
No, this was great. It was a lot of fun. Like I said, I always enjoy these conversations. I try to not to, but I always have like a notepad next to me. I got like 6 things over here that I want to try to jump to.
Well,
head,
Well, Myles, it was certainly a great chatting with you. Yes, and if anyone listening is looking to reach out to talk to an expert and someone who has a vast amount of experience in this area, is interested in improving their business, reducing their costs, and protecting themselves against all of those threats that are out there, feel free to reach out to Myles. He's a great guy, and I'm sure you'd have a good chat. Myles, thank you very much, and we'll look forward to chatting with you again at some other time.
All right, sounds great.